Good evening, friends, fam, and mysterious strangers from beyond the pale of the internet. Do not attempt to adjust your television or computer monitors. You have just entered the Bedtime Zone. With me, Colin. I'm Brother Bedtime. Hi, everybody. We'll have no wardrobe malfunctions on the show today. You're a bit quiet tonight, Sam. Make sure. Not sure about everyone else. Check one, check two. How's it sounding out there, folks? Do I need to bring my trusty little gem a little bit closer? Reality is peeking through. Hey, Lance. Welcome. Just adjusting some sound. How's it sounding out there for everybody tonight? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you, but I can see what you type in the chat. So please, type in the chat. You're looking good, Colin. Oh my gosh, Lance. Shucks. Stop. Sounding good? My very good little dwarf is pointing emphatically at the sound. Turn it up? Okay, I'm turning the sound up. Let's see here. I think if I do a little bit of that, should be okay. How's that? Check one, check two. Is it possible to turn it up on your end, Sam? I think other people seem to be okay. Regardless, folks, hi, welcome. Oh my god, it's Monday. We finally made it through the awful, terrible, no good, very bad slog that is known as the weekend, when all structure goes out the window and we are left to our own devices. We are at last arrived at the beginning of a brand new week. We have our responsibilities and our duties stretched out ahead of us like a glorious path of purpose. So, I hope your weekend was great. I got to see not one but two families, which was so nice. I had a little barbecue with my fam on Friday, who I was thinking I don't know that I had shared a meal with them since about Christmas time or so. So that was really wonderful. The whole COVID thing kind of hit right before a couple of key holidays in our little family. So it's been a minute. And then just yesterday, I got to see the wonderful Jeffrey family as well. They came up for some socially distant patio food, and it was a really lovely weekend, all things considered. And I hope you had one as well. I know you had a weekend, but I hope it was a good one. And barring that, well, don't worry, you're safe now. Tonight is a special night. We will be concluding our journey through the Voyage of the Dawn Treader by ya boy Clive Staples Lewis. This has been a delight for me. This Voyage of the Dawn Treader book has been an absolute joy to revisit. I had forgotten about all of the different magical islands. Ah, yes, the island of the Dragon Island, the Dufflepuds, of course, and their bizarre transmogrification. The excellent rendition of the Magician's Book on the same island. It goes on and on. The delicious little snippets of fantastic adventures that our gaggle has been on. No one else getting a fan noise? I don't know what to tell you, Sam. Hopefully you can tune it out and enjoy the dulcet tones of me. I mean, you could also just come sit on the couch and listen to me, but that's nowhere near as much fun, is it? Shout out to Sam with Bells On, who was nominated for a Sterling Award. Those went out tonight, and while she did not win, she received many accolades from many professional colleagues for work well deserving of it. So shout out to all of my Edmonton, and I guess the Doors were tonight or yesterday too. So a big shout out to all of the indie theater folks out there. I hope your awards were pleasing and gratifying. Volume is kind of low. We're getting that from Colleen Frank. All right, we're gonna break the fourth wall a little bit. We will adjust the microphone like so. It's like a white noise problem. I did not close the window, so there could be some little business coming in from outside. But apart from that, I'm not sure what to tell you, folks. So, oh, there's egg on my face. Technical egg, the worst kind of egg. Electrical egg. Don't worry, we've got our sound tech on the go, fixing plugs, adjusting widgets, turning dials, screwing knobs, flicking switches, pressing buttons. You can see my world shaking briefly as a result of her well-meaning intervention. She shrugs. It's really loud though. Huh. Sounds like a nice breeze. That's really weird. I'm not sure where it's coming from.
It's like an electrical wave that's blowing.
Mysterious. Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to deal with it for tonight.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you. Good luck to me. Yeah. I hope it's not too distracting, folks. We'll sort it out in post. We'll fix it in post. Everything can be fixed in post, including editing this microphone out. Just kidding. We won't do that. At any rate, this evening's beverage is delicious Edmontonian tap water, straight from the Brita filter and the fridge, so it's nice and cool. It's a lovely complement to the metric pound of pierogies I devoured moments before going live, so hopefully that'll help with some of the the technical back end there. Hey, gross, Colin. We'll just enjoy my chocolate stout. That's the ticket. Yeah. Well, regardless of however the sound is, I hope you're having a lovely night, and I offer this thrilling conclusion to the finale of The Voyage of the Dawn Treader as a compliment to whatever you're up to. Chapter 16. Oh wait, McKinnon Lance says they can imagine it as the ocean that the Dawn Treader is sailing through. I like that. I like that a lot. Now, where was I? Focus, brother Bedtime. It's bedtime, brother. Chapter 16. The Very End of the World. You'll recall that, oh my god, I didn't even do the synopsis. We're going to get this chapter started any minute now, folks. But previously, they sailed off of the island where, what's his name? Ramandu. I am Ramandu. The fallen star, who's chilling out, reverse aging like Benjamin Button until such a time as he will ascend again to the skies. They sailed east towards the sun, which was getting bigger and bigger and brighter, and they could see the bottom of the ocean beneath them, which was filled with sea monkeys, hyper-intelligent, feudalistic sea monkeys from the look of things. And Reepicheep decided to jump in and take a splash, and he discovered that the water tastes sweet. And everybody that had a sip was filled with almost too much divine energy. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't talk. They just kind of sat there digesting. Yum, from Samuel Smith. Hard to find. Lovely, lovely, lovely. At any rate, the last chapter concluded with Edmund shaking his head. Oh yeah, that's right. As Caspian was making all sorts of wild conjectures about our round Earth. And so, at long last, we finally begin the last chapter of The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Chapter 16, The Very End of the World. Reepicheep was the only person on board besides Drinian and the two Pevensies who had noticed the sea people. He had dived in at once when he saw the Sea King shaking his spear, for he regarded this as a sort of threat or challenge and wanted to have the matter out there and then. The excitement of discovering that the water was now fresh had distracted his attention, and before he remembered the sea people again, Lucy and Drinian had taken him aside and warned him not to mention what he had seen. As things turned out, they need hardly have bothered, for by the time the Dawn Treader was gliding over the part of the sea which seemed... For by this time, the Dawn Treader was gliding over a part of the sea which seemed to be uninhabited. No one except Lucy saw anything more of the people, and even she had only a short glimpse. All morning on the following day they sailed in fairly shallow water, and the bottom was weedy. Just before midday, Lucy saw a large shoal of fishes grazing on the weed. They were all eating steadily and all moving in the same direction. Just like a flock of sheep, thought Lucy. Suddenly she saw a little sea girl of about her own age in the middle of them, a quiet, lonely-looking girl with a sort of crook in her hand. Lucy felt that this girl must be a shepherdess, or perhaps a fisherdess, and that the shoal was really a flock at pasture. Both the fishes and the girl were quite close to the surface, and just as the girl, gliding in the shallow water, and Lucy, leaning over the bulwark, came opposite to one another, the girl looked up and stared straight into Lucy's face. Neither could speak to the other, and in a moment the sea girl dropped astern, but Lucy will never forget her face. It did not look frightened or angry like those other people of the sea. Lucy had liked that girl, and she felt certain the girl had liked her. In that one moment they had somehow become friends. There does not seem to be much of chance of their meeting again in that world or any other, but if ever they do, they will rush together with their hands held out. Isn't that nice? You'll notice we've got our backup tiny Prometheus, our Fometheus here. What's up, little guy? Holding it down, keeping it visually warm in the space. After that, for many days, without wind in her shrouds or foam at her bows, across a waveless sea, the Dawn Treader glided smoothly east. Every day and every hour, the light became more brilliant and still they could bear it. No one ate or slept, and no one wanted to, but they drew buckets of dazzling water from the sea, stronger than wine, and somehow wetter, more liquid than ordinary water, and pledged one another silently in deep draughts of it. And one or two of the sailors, who had been oldish men when the voyage began, now grew younger every day. Everyone on board was filled with joy and excitement, but not an excitement that made one talk. The further they sailed, the less they spoke, and then almost in a whisper. The stillness of the last sea laid hold on them. "My lord," said Caspian to Drinian one day, "what do you see ahead?"
"Sire," said Drinian, "I see whiteness, all along the horizon from north to south, as far as my eyes can reach."
"That is what I see too," said Caspian, "and I cannot imagine what it is."
"If we were in higher latitudes, your majesty," said Drinian, "I would say it was ice. But it can't be that, not here. All the same, we better get men to the oars and hold the ship back against the current. Whatever the stuff is, we don't want to crash into it at this speed."
They did as Drinian said, and so continued to go slower and slower. The whiteness did not get any less mysterious as they approached it. If it was land, it must be a very strange land, for it seemed just as smooth as the water and on the same level with it. When they got very close to it, Drinian put the helm hard over and turned the Dawn Treader south so that she was broadside onto the current and rowed a little way southward along the edge of the whiteness. In so doing, they accidentally made the important discovery that the current was only about 40 feet wide, and the rest of the sea was still as a pond. This was good news for the crew, who had already begun to think that the return journey to Ramandu's land, rowing against stream all the way, would be pretty poor sport. It also explained why the shepherd girl had dropped so quickly astern. She was not in the current. If she had been, she would have been moving east at the same speed as the ship. A little bit of rudimentary physics for you folks. And still, no one could make out what the white stuff was. Then the boat was lowered, and it put off to investigate. Those who remained on the Dawn Treader could see that the boat pushed right in amidst the whiteness. Then they could hear the voices of the party in the boat, clear across the still water, talking in a shrill and surprised way. Then there was a pause while Rheinalf in the bows of the boat took a sounding, and when, after that, the boat came rowing back, There seemed to be plenty of the white stuff inside of her. Everyone crowded to the side to hear the news. "Lilies, your majesty!" shouted Rhino, standing up in the bows. "What did you say?" asked Caspian. "Blooming lilies, your majesty," said Rhino. "Same as in a pool or in a garden at home." "Look," said Lucy, who was in the stern of the boat. She held up her wet arms, full of white petals and broad, flat leaves.
"What's the depth, Rhinof?" asked Drinian.
"That's the funny thing, Captain," said Rhinof. "It's still deep, 3.5 fathoms clear." "They can't be real lilies, not what we call lilies," said Eustace. Probably they were not, but they were very like them. And when, after some consultation, the Dawn Treader turned back into the current and began to glide eastward through the Lily Lake or the Silver Sea, they tried both these names, but it was on the Silver Sea that stuck and is now on Caspian's map. The strangest part of their travels began. Very soon, the open sea which they were leaving was only a thin rim of blue on the western horizon. Whiteness, shot with faintest color of gold, spread round them on every side, except just astern, where their passage had thrust the lilies apart and left an open lane of water that shone like dark green glass. To look at, this last sea was very like the Arctic. And if their eyes had not by now grown as strong as eagles, the sun on all that whiteness, especially at early morning when the sun was hugest, would have been unbearable. And every evening the same whiteness made the daylight last longer. There seemed no end to the lilies. Day after day, from all those miles and leagues of flowers, there rose a smell which Lucy found it very hard to describe. Sweet, yes, but not at all sleepy or overpowering. A fresh, wild, lonely smell that seemed to get into your brain and make you feel you could go up mountains at a run or wrestle with an elephant. She and Caspian said to one another, "I feel that I can't stand much more of this, yet I don't want it to stop." They took soundings very often, but it was only several days later that the water became shallower. After that it went on getting shallower. There came a day when they had to row out of the current and feel their way forward at a snail's pace, rowing. And soon it was clear that the Dawn Treader could sail no further east. Indeed, it was only by very clever handling that they saved her from grounding. "Lower the boat," cried Caspian, "and then call the men aft. I must speak to them." "What's he going to do?" whispered Eustace to Edmund. "There's a queer look in his eyes." "I think we probably all look the same," said Edmund. They joined Caspian on the poop. And soon all the men were crowded together at the foot of the ladder to hear the king's speech. Oh, I'm so glad we got one more poop in. "Friends," said Caspian, "we have now fulfilled the quest on which you embarked. The 7 lords are all accounted for, and as Sir Reepicheep has sworn never to return, when you reach Ramandu's land, you will doubtless find the lords Revilian and Argos and Mavrimorn awake. To you, my Lord Drinian, I entrust this ship, bidding you sail to Narnia with all the speed you may, and above all not to land on the island of Deathwater. And instruct my regent, the dwarf Trumpkin, to give all these, my shipmates, the rewards I promised them. They have been earned well. And if I come not again, it is my will that the regent, and Master Cornelius, and Truffle Hunter the Badger, and the Lord Drinian choose a king of Narnia with the consent—"
"But sire," interrupted Drinian, "are you abdicating?"
"I am going with Reepicheep to see the world's end," said Caspian. A low murmur of dismay ran through the sailors. Ooh. "We will take the boat," said Caspian. "You will have no need of it in these gentle seas, and you must build a new one on Ramandu's island. And now—" "Caspian," said Edmund suddenly and sternly, "you can't do this." Most certainly, said Reepicheep. His Majesty cannot.
No, indeed, said Drinian.
Can't, said Caspian sharply, looking for a moment not unlike his uncle Miraz. Begging your Majesty's pardon, said Rheinolf from the deck below, but if one of us did the same, it would be called deserting. You presume too much on your long service, Rheinolf, said Caspian.
No, sire, he's perfectly right,
said Drinian. By the mane of Aslan, said Caspian, I had thought you were all my subjects here, not my schoolmasters. I'm not, said Edmund, and I say you cannot do this. Can't again, said Caspian. What do you mean? If it please your Majesty, we mean shall not, said Reepicheep, with a very low bow. You are the king of Narnia. You break faith with all your subjects, and especially with Trumpkin, if you do not return. You shall not please yourself with adventures as if you were a private person. And if your Majesty will not hear reason, it will be the truest loyalty of every man on board to follow me in disarming and binding you till you come to your senses. Quite right, said Edmund, like they did with Ulysses when he wanted to go near the sirens. I expect that reference would be rather lost on the Narnians, but it's an apt comparison all the same. Caspian's got the wanderlust. Oh boy, he's got adventure fever. Caspian's hand had gone to his sword hilt when Lucy said, "And you've almost promised Ramandu's daughter to go back." Caspian paused. "Oh, well, yes. There is that," he said. He stood irresolute for a moment, and then shouted out to the ship in general, "Well, have your way. The quest is ended. We all return. Get the boat up again." "Sire," said Reepicheep, "we do not all return. As I explained before—" "Silence!" thundered Caspian. "I've been lessoned, but I'll not be baited. Will no one silence that mouse?" "Your Majesty promised," said Reepicheep, "to be good lord to the talking beasts of Narnia." "Talking beasts, yes," said Caspian. "I said nothing about beasts that never stop talking." And he flung down the ladder in a temper and went into the cabin, slamming the door. Oh, he's having a little regal temper tantrum. Poor fellow. I guess Caspian is only what, like 17? It's hard to tell, but I think he's still a youngish man. Caspian temper tantrum. Yeah, big time, Mulric, you said it. I have no doubt that he will come to his senses, though. He is a good king. He's a fine king. When the others rejoined him, a little later, they found him changed. He was white, and there were tears in his eyes. "It's no good," he said. "I might as well have behaved decently for all the good I did with my temper and swagger. Aslan has spoken to me. No, I don't mean he was actually here. He wouldn't fit into the cabin, for one thing. But that gold lion's head on the wall came to life and spoke to me. It was terrible. His eyes. Not that what he said, not that he was all that rough with me, only a bit stern at first, but it was terrible all the same. And he said, oh, I can't bear it. The worst thing he could have said. You're to go on, Reep, and Edmund, and Lucy, and Eustace, and I'm to go back, alone, and at once. And what is the good of anything?" "Caspian, dear," said Lucy, "you knew we'd have to go back to our own world sooner or later." "Yes," said Caspian with a sob, "but this is sooner." "You'll feel better when you get back to Ramandu's island," said Lucy. He cheered up a little later on, but it was a grievous parting on both sides, and I will not dwell on it. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, well victualled and watered, though they thought they would need neither food nor drink, and with Reepicheep's coracle on board, the boat pulled away from the Dawn Treader to row through the endless carpet of lilies. The Dawn Treader flew all her flags and hung out her shields to honor their departure. Tall and big and home-like she looked from their low position with the lilies all round them. And even before she was out of sight, they saw her turn and begin rowing slowly westward. Yet, though Lucy shed a few tears, she could not feel it as much as you might have expected. The light, the silence, the tingling smell of the silver sea, even, in some odd way, the loneliness itself, were too exciting. There was no need to row. He's 16. He has a right to be dramatic. You said it, Marin. Lucy to the rescue. That's right. Don't forget, Caspian, you have a girlfriend. Ooh. Gosh, where would the Narnians be without the level-headed Lucy? There was no need to row, for the current drifted them steadily to the east. None of them slept or ate. All that night and all the next day they glided eastward, and when the third day dawned, with a brightness you or I could not bear even if we had dark glasses on, they saw a wonder ahead. It was as if a wall stood up between them and the sky, a greenish-gray, trembling, shimmering wall. Then up came the sun. And at its first rising, they saw it through the wall, and it turned into wonderful rainbow colors. Then they knew that the wall was really a long, tall wave, a wave endlessly fixed in one place, as you may often see at the edge of a waterfall. It seemed to be about 30 feet high, and the current was gliding them swiftly toward it. You might have supposed they would have thought of their danger. They didn't. I don't think anyone in their position could have. For now they saw something not only behind the wave, but behind the sun. They could not have seen even the sun if their eyes had not been strengthened by the water of the last sea. But now they could look at the rising sun and see it clearly, and see things beyond it. What they saw, eastward, beyond the sun, was a range of mountains. It was so high that either they never saw the top of it, or they forgot it. None of them remembers seeing any sky in that direction, and the mountains must really have been outside the world. For any mountains, even a quarter of a 20th of that height ought to have had ice and snow on them. But these were warm and green and full of forests and waterfalls however high you looked. And suddenly there came a breeze from the east, tossing the top of the wave into foamy shapes and ruffling the smooth water all round them. It lasted only a second or so, but what it brought them in that second, none of those 3 children will ever forget. It brought a smell and a sound, a musical sound. Edmund and Eustace would never talk about it afterward. Lucy could only say, "It would break your heart." "Why," said I, "was it so sad?" "Sad? No," said Lucy. Here we can see the 2 youngest Pevensies, the scrub boy, who has done a marginal job of redeeming himself as worst child, and Reepicheep perched on the prow of the tiny boat that was put down by the Dawn Treader as our protagonists continue to the last leg of their voyage. No one in that boat doubted that they were seeing beyond the end of the world into Aslan's country. At that moment, with a crunch, the boat ran aground. The water was too shallow now for it. "This," said Reepicheep, is where I go on alone." They did not even try to stop him, for everything now felt as if it had been fated or had happened before. They helped him to lower his little coracle. Then he took off his sword. "I shall need it no more," he said, and flung it far away across the lilied sea. Where it fell, it stood upright with the hilt above the surface. Then he bade them goodbye, trying to be sad for their sakes, but he was quivering with happiness. Lucy, for the first and last time, did what she had always wanted to do, taking him in her arms and caressing him. Then, hastily, he got into his coracle and took his paddle, and the current caught it, and away he went, very black against the lilies. But no lilies grew on the wave. It was a smooth green slope. The coracle went more and more quickly, and beautifully it rushed up the wave's side. For one split second they saw its shape and Reepicheep's on the very top. Then it vanished, and since that moment no one can truly claim to have seen Reepicheep the mouse. But my belief is that he came safe to Aslan's country and is alive there to this day. As the sun rose, the sight of those mountains outside the world faded away. The wave remained, but there was only blue sky behind it. The children got out of the boat and waded, not toward the wave, but southward, with the wall of water on their left. They could not have told you why they did this. It was their fate. And though they had felt, and been, very grown-up on the Dawn Treader, they now felt just the opposite, and held hands as they waded through the lilies. They never felt tired. The water was warm, and all the time it got shallower. At last they were on dry sand, and then on grass, a huge plain of very fine short grass, almost level with the silver sea, and spreading in every direction without so much as a molehill. And of course, as it always does in a perfectly flat place without trees, it looked as if the sky came down to meet the grass in front of them. But as they went on, they got the strangest impression that here, at last, the sky did really come down and join the earth. A blue wall, very bright, but real and solid, more like glass than anything else. And soon they were quite sure of it. It was very near now. But between them and the foot of the sky, there was something so white on the green grass that even with their eagle's eyes, they could hardly look at it. They came on and saw that it was a lamb. Here we can see the three children having stumbled upon a little lamb living at the edge of the world. Appears to be having a little cookout. "Come and have breakfast," said the lamb in its sweet, milky voice. Then they noticed for the first time that there was a fire lit on the grass and fish roasting on it. They sat down and ate the fish, hungry now for the first time in many days, and it was the most delicious food they had ever tasted. "Please, lamb," said Lucy, "is this the way to Aslan's country?" "Not for you," said the lamb. "For you, the door into Aslan's country is from your own world." "What?" said Edmund. "Is there a way into Aslan's country from our world too?" "There is a way into my country from all the worlds," said the lamb. But as he spoke, his snowy white flushed into tawny gold, and his size changed, and he was Aslan himself, towering above them and scattering light from his mane. "Oh, Aslan," said Lucy, "will you tell us how to get into your country from our world?" "I shall be telling you all the time," said Aslan, "but I will not tell you how long or short the way will be, only that it lies across a river. But do not fear that, for I am the great bridge builder. And now come. I will open the door in the sky and send you to your own land." "Please, Aslan," said Lucy, "before we go, will you tell us when we can come back to Narnia again? Please, And oh, do make it soon. Dearest, said Aslan very gently, you and your brother will never come back to Narnia. Oh, Aslan, said Edmund and Lucy, together in despairing voices. You are too old, children, said Aslan, and you must begin to come close to your own world now. It isn't Narnia, you know, sobbed Lucy. It's you. We shan't meet you there. And how can we live, never meeting you? But you shall meet me, dear one, said Aslan. Are you there too, sir? Said Edmund. I am, said Aslan. But there I have another name. You must learn to know me by that name. This was the very reason why you were brought to Narnia, that by knowing me here for a little, you may know me better there. And is Eustace never to come back here either? Said Lucy. Child, said Aslan, do you really need to know that? Come, I am opening the door in the sky. Then, all in one moment, there was a rending of the blue wall, like a curtain being torn, and a terrible white light from beyond the sky, and the feel of Aslan's mane, and a lion's kiss on their foreheads, and then the back bedroom in Aunt Alberta's home at Cambridge. Only two more things need to be told. One is that Caspian and all his men came safely back to Ramandu's island, and the three lords woke from their sleep. Caspian, I knew it, married Ramandu's daughter, and they all reached Narnia in the end, and she became a great queen and the mother and grandmother of great kings. The other is that back in our world, everyone soon started saying how Eustace had improved, and how you'd never know him for the same boy. Everyone except Aunt Alberta, who said he had become very commonplace and tiresome, and it must have been the influence of those Pevensey children. And that, my dear bedtimers, my sweet dreamers, is the end of the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. The end. There we go. We got there. Oh. Well, some pretty on the nose Christian symbolism there at the end, which I think is great. You know, C.S. Lewis was a very staunch devotee of his faith, and you know, it makes perfect sense that being as convicted as he was, that he would want to write books that would lead him to the same truth that he found. Yeah, it's I love how, you know, so many of the great religions of the world have very, very similar core tenets about mutual love and respect, and the truth is a huge one, telling the truth and honesty and all of that. And it's so easy for people to discount the wisdom and the value of those old stories. So anything that goes away to sort of repackaging it for the less faith-based crowd, I think is a worthy endeavor. And you know, of course, C.S. Lewis was a human being in his own time, and his writing is not entirely unproblematic, and is, you know, rooted in a lot of notions that today would be considered improper. Maybe not a lot, but certainly some of his renderings of the way that boys and girls behave is rooted firmly in his time and culture. But yeah, I like it. I really like it. Mulric says the door to Aslan's country is in France. Sacre bleu. Marin Shea says some kids could really use a good voyage. Maybe a sea voyage should be a prerequisite to growing up. Yeah, forget 2 years in the military like they do in Iran and Korea and stuff. Put those babies on a boat. That and working in retail / food service / fast food service. Food service, yeah. Yeah, that's the trial by fire of our Western culture is go and be treated poorly for minimum wage for a couple of years. Then you know what it's like to be a grown-up. Oh, and hopefully you learned something along the way, i.e., to treat people in the service industry with respect. Because it's not easy, and it's not a ton of fun. Well, the Pevensies may never return to Narnia, as Aslan has stated, and you know, as far as Eustace goes, who knows? Perhaps it's best to leave such questions unanswered for another time. And while the children might be getting too old to return to Narnia, we certainly are not. Tomorrow night we will be back with the 6th book of the series. My goodness, we're getting close to the end. The penultimate book of the franchise, The Silver Chair, which, as I recall, was the most, well, the spookiest one, or the one that gave me the most gibblies as a child. So I'm looking forward to getting a little bit freaked out, getting a little antsy, see some of that bad magic at play. Yeah. So I think that's it for tonight, folks. Thanks for tuning in. I hope your evening is restorative and relaxing, and you know, that you have a really lovely dream about sailing on a sea of white lilies tonight. I think that's what I'm going to shoot for myself. Anyways, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Good night, moon, and good night, stars. Good night, trucks, and good night, cars. Good night, shoes, and good night, hats. Good night, dogs, and good night, cats. Good night to friends and family. Good night to you, and good night to me. Sweet dreams, everybody. See you tomorrow night.